Alrighty. Good morning, and thank you for attending our session. My name is Misti Bruceri, and I am the coordinator for the REACH Codes program, which is part of the Statewide Codes and Standards program. In our presentation today, we are going to discuss, excuse me, I apologize. I am joined today by Eric Engelman, who is the director of Policy Studio, a policy design firm, and David Freedman from both the city of Palm Springs and the Inland Regional Energy Network, or IREN. And our presentation today, we're going to, there he is. Hi, David. Good morning. In our presentation, we're going to discuss, a little bit of a REACH code structure that encourages but doesn't mandate electrification measures for existing single-family homes. I'm going to start with a brief overview, then I'm going to hand things over to Eric. And he is the brains behind the Cost Effectiveness Explorer tool, which will actually walks you through the development process for an ordinance. And then David Freedman from IREN and Palm Springs will review his experience using the tool to craft an ordinance for existing homes in Palm Springs and some of the tips and tricks he's found as he goes through that process. Okay, so what is a REACH code? REACH code is actually an informal term for an ordinance. It's actually an ordinance or an amendment to often the building code, or possibly a municipal code, such as the health and safety code. In California, every 3 years, the state adopts a new building code, and each local government is obligated to adopt that code locally as well. Local governments have the authority to amend the code for local conditions, though they're not allowed to make it less stringent when they do so. That process happens via an ordinance, which is a standard mechanism for enacting local laws. Although it's kind of less common in energy, it's actually a very common process for local governments to adopt amendments to the code to respond to their local conditions or needs. Past couple of cycles, there's probably nearly half of the local governments adopted some sort of an amendment or another. For our program, we tend to focus on the energy related portion of the building code, which is in part 6 and also in part 11, the Calgary section. So why adopt a REACH code? Well, there's a lot of different reasons to do so. One could you could save energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It may be part of a strategy in the climate action plan for the city. Of course, it also aligns with our state decarbonization policies. And lastly, it is a way of documenting local and or regional leadership for a jurisdiction. Okay. I'm going to do just a really quick overview of some of the services that the REACH Codes program offers to help facilitate the adoption of REACH Codes. One of the things we do is we prepare cost effectiveness analyses that can support a REACH code, especially for one that amends Part 6, the energy code. We also provide draft model language to help jurisdictions get started, so you're not starting from a blank page. We develop several tools, such as the Cost Effectiveness Explorer, but we also have other less technical tools, such as checklists and things like that. And we provide a range of technical support to staff. We try to communicate and network within jurisdictions so that we all are aware of things and keep everybody on the same page. And also we publish a newsletter as well as highlighting many cities and their experience so that others can hopefully leverage that experience and learn from it. Okay, so what do we mean by a flexible path? Near the end of last year, we had completed a study on existing buildings, on existing single-family homes. And we knew that many jurisdictions that had already adopted new construction ordinances were beginning to turn their attention towards existing buildings as the majority of the savings is going to come from those buildings. So we started looking at our study, and we had identified one performance approach, but it did require modeling, with the compliance software. And so we wanted to look for a slightly simpler way, if we could, to add a little bit more flexibility to the study results. When we started looking at our results, we had identified a range of cost-effective measures, but given the possibility, the range of existing site conditions and project scopes, we found that even though we had a lot of measures, they may not necessarily be appropriate for any particular project. They may not actually be related to that project. And so we did a little bit of restructuring. And what we did is we took all of our cost-effective measures and added them up. We determined what is the maximum potential cost-effective savings. Okay, and then we assign points to all the measures based on the energy savings from each. And by doing that, it allows a jurisdiction to establish a performance target or a score that applicants have to meet. And it also allows applicants to select the best measures and add up all the points for each measure to meet that target. In doing that, it allows applicants the flexibility to pick measures that actually make sense for their project, rather than just selecting measures from a fixed list. By providing a lot more options, this way we are actually able to include measures that aren't cost effective because they are not specifically required. An applicant can choose them if they make sense for their project, even though they're not cost effective. The structure also allows a lot of flexibility in the triggers. And a jurisdiction can set all different kinds of triggers. You could set it at a price value or a particular amount, a certain size of the project. There's all different ways to set the triggers. They can be different levels of triggers. You can also structure things a little bit differently and then adjust the stringency by how you set that target score. Because the project is based on site savings, it also tracks emissions reductions very well. And it also encourages electrification because heat pumps tend to be a lot more efficient than their gas counterparts. So there's a whole lot of savings, and heat pumps tend to score very, very well in this structure. And so it really encourages people to electrify. Okay. And lastly, we tried to consider equity, especially for existing homes. We really wanted to consider equity in this design. And there is some room in this kind of a structure to set the requirements with an eye towards that. Of course, there's different ways to do it. But one that we found is to limit the requirement for applicants that are income qualified, however you set that requirement, to only a single measure. The measure that tends to float to the top almost all of the time is duct sealing. And we found that it's actually a great candidate for something like this because it tends to be, if not the most cost-effective measure in the mix, it's one of the most cost-effective measures. And it generally, there's a very low incremental cost. It's typically less than $1,000. And the payback is usually very fast. For example, in Palm Springs, where David is developing his ordinance for older homes, the payback is just about a year. And so the applicant isn't required to expend a ton of money to meet the ordinance requirement. It's fairly limited, and they get a lot of value from it. It improves comfort, it pays back very quickly. It actually will improve indoor air quality as well, and also can add to the resilience of the home. Gives applicants a way to float through those kind of PSPS events or other events much more comfortably by keeping the ducts sealed and the envelope tighter that way. So we've developed that a lot. I know that's a lot of information and it's very high level. And so I'm going to turn it over to Eric now to delve into the details and how the structure actually works. Go ahead, take it away, Eric.
All right, thank you, Misty. So the Cost Effectiveness Explorer is a great tool for creating a flexible path policy. And I will be telling you a little bit more about the background about the Explorer, and then I'll demonstrate for you how it works to create such a policy inside the Explorer. Next slide, please. All right. So this video is a great little rundown, and so we're going to try and see if we're going to play that, and then if Misty, you could confirm that the volume is coming through, that would be great. Rita, you can hit play.
Welcome. My name is Jasmine.
Before we go on, can everybody hear that okay? Thank
Yes,
you.
we can.
Thank you.
And this is the Flexible Paths tutorial for the Cost Effectiveness Explorer. So why offer a flexible compliance path? For starters, every home is different. A rigid policy that requires a predefined set of measures for all situations can make it harder for citizens to comply when the requirements don't match their situation. Say a policy proposes to require, among other measures, attic insulation, which looks like a good investment that pays back within several years. However, imagine an individual homeowner has a large attic and a growing family, and they're saving money to convert their attic into an additional kid's bedroom in the next year, which would require removal of any attic insulation in order to put down flooring. Complying with a rigid attic insulation requirement would be quite onerous. Instead, a flexible compliance path that allows the homeowner to choose among a set of alternative measures, which save at least as much energy as installing attic insulation, would be a win-win. So we know a flexible compliance path allows homeowners to choose the measures that are most appropriate for them from a menu of optional measures, and that jurisdictions can configure these options to variously include PV, electrification, or gas efficiency measures. The Cost Effectiveness Explorer allows you to do this by creating a measure menu. This menu defines a simple point score for each measure that is based on the estimated energy savings calculated by the applicable cost effectiveness study for a given home type, climate zone, and vintage. To comply with your policy, the homeowners must choose any set of measures that achieves a minimum point total, which we call the target score. Target scores are set based on the total potential energy savings available from the measures found to be cost-effective in each vintage. And with the Cost Effectiveness Explorer, you can easily calibrate your desired target score up to the maximum cost-effective level, and you can further configure which optional measures you'd like to include or exclude in your measure menu.
All right, thank you, Rita. So to recap a little bit, we've set up the Explorer to allow you to create your flexible compliance path for an existing residential policy. And this allows cities and counties to require a minimum performance score, but allow flexibility for how permit applicants want to achieve that score. And the Explorer lets you configure a menu of potential qualifying measures and assigns each one a score based on the potential energy savings of that measure. Next slide, please. So before I go into demonstrating a little bit more about how that works in the tool, I'll just give you some background on what is this thing, the Cost Effectiveness Explorer. So this is a free web-based tool for all California local governments. And it's designed to accelerate REACH code adoption and help cities and counties make better data-driven decisions. And we launched it in late 2020. We have findings from about 5 cost-effectiveness studies right now, and that number is climbing as we're eagerly awaiting adding new construction studies as they come out. We provide building stock estimates for all of the California city jurisdictions. Right now we support existing residential building stock, and we also support new construction forecasts for existing and, for residential and non-residential. And we help users evaluate and develop different cost-effective policy options. Next slide. Okay, actually, let's go back one, and this is where I'm going to take over the screen and show you what it looks like. All right. So this is the homepage of the Cost Effectiveness Explorer, and you can get to it by going through the localenergycodes.com website, or you can directly go to explorer.localenergycodes.com. So the first step is to enter your city or county. So let's enter City of Long Beach. And we get to this homepage where we have the option to jump right into creating an existing building policy. We can also see the available cost effectiveness studies and their versions. And for each study, we can see the results in the tool, download a PDF, or see more information about that study. So let's go right into the results for existing residential buildings. And we see here a breakdown where each card represents a building vintage. So this card represents existing single-family homes built before 1978. And we can see that in the city of Long Beach, this makes up 94% of the existing single-family homes in that climate zone. And if we want to get more details on Long Beach's housing stock, we can click here. And we see these charts in more data. We can see the breakdown between single family and multifamily units. We can see the breakdown by climate zone. And we can also drill into more of this data and see it by vintage. You can see that the vast majority of single family homes were built pre-1978 in Long Beach. And we can also forecast future construction. And any of these figures, we can override them with our own assumptions, and that's true for single family, multifamily, and non-residential. So going back to results, we're now confident that pre-1978 homes are a good area to focus. So on the results page again, we see a table of all of the measures that were analyzed in this particular study here. And each row is a measure, and for each measure we see various results like the benefit to cost ratio, the incremental cost, the annual bill savings on a per home basis. And then we also see projections citywide. If we were to make a policy off of any of these measures as a requirement, how many units would it affect? What would be the total GHG savings? What would be the total life cycle savings? And we can sort any of these. So let's say we want to see, let's sort by emission savings and see which measures have the highest ones. So we see here that the measures with the highest savings, emission savings, are the burnout measures, replacing gas appliance with an electric one when it burns out. However, as Misti mentioned, a lot of these are not cost effective, or they're actually situationally cost effective. They're really, well, actually, in this case, they're not even situationally cost effective. This analysis assumed that these appliances, like your HVAC or your heat pump, was already being replaced, and just looked at the increment of upgrading and fuel switching to an electric appliance. So one of the beauties of the flexible path approach, which I'll show you in a moment, is, well, although you can't require these burnout measures, you can make them options for if they fit a person's situation. For that permit applicant, they can go ahead and substitute and elect to do that option in exchange for other requirements. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the flexible paths, and we're going to create a policy, and we can call this demo. And it's going to give me a couple questions. One is, would I like a flexible path? So I'm going to say yes. 2, do I want to choose all the measures myself or let the tool choose it for me? And so I'm going to let the tool choose it for me. It's going to choose all of the measures that are compatible with each other and are cost effective. And I'm going to choose to focus on single family dwellings. And it's going to now, in the back end, the system is generating, it's looking at all the measures from the study results, and it's generating a score for our measure menu table based on the energy savings. And it's now ready to view. So we're going to view that table. And so this is a table that would be somewhat like what a permit applicant complying with your future policy might see, but it's set up so that as a policymaker, we can configure it. So right now it's telling us that the maximum cost-effective score we could require in this pre-1978 vintage is 31. And right now we have it configured to require 16, which is an arbitrary middle point. So if we wanted to get more stringent, we could say, no, we want everybody to achieve, let's say 25 points. Okay, so how do you achieve 25 points? Well, as a permit applicant, you would select any combination of measures from this list. And as long as they added up to at least that minimum of 25 points, you would be considered compliant. So as a policymaker, we have a couple of options for configuring this menu of measures. One is we can go ahead, well, besides setting the target score as we just did, we can also go ahead and if for whatever reason we don't want a measure to be an option here, let's say we have a separate cool roof policy already and we don't want people to double count for that, we can go ahead and just simply remove cool roof as an option. And another possibility is if we want to make a certain measure mandatory, we can go ahead and do that as well by clicking this star. And so we can go ahead and share this table with our colleagues so that they can give their input and feedback, and we can share it with stakeholders. A link is copied to the clipboard. And then from here, we can also go ahead and download this table into an Excel format. And then from there, when we go to download, it gives us the option to also download the model ordinance that the Reach Code team has prepared. And from there, we can take the, we can take the table that we've downloaded, make sure it looks good, and then put that into the appropriate section of the model ordinance. And we have a head start on creating our ordinance. So I think that's all I have time to show you on this demo. So I'm going to stop here and go back to the slides. 1 second. Thank you, Rita. Okay, so I went through a couple sections of the tool. There's also the ability to compare policies, see the citywide impacts, and much more. So I really encourage you to visit the Explorer. And please reach out if you have any questions or suggestions. Next slide. All right, and like I said, we're working on new construction studies and new construction policies. Look for those features to start rolling out soon. We already have new construction forecasts, and in the next couple of months, we'll have others. Next slide. All right, and then I'm going to hand it to David Freedman from Palm Springs. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to present to you this morning and spend a few minutes talking about how I've been using all of the wonderful tools and features that Eric just presented in designing a REACH code for the city of Palm Springs, focusing on our aggressive climate action policies and also with an equity focus that I will be discussing a little bit later. Next slide, please. So in Palm Springs, we have a very climate action friendly city council. And in 2016, the council adopted a sustainability plan with some very aggressive goals that they told us to achieve. I've been a member since then, since 2015, of the Sustainability Commission, and it's been my objective to actually work on achieving all of these goals. In particular, the state goals, reducing GHG emissions to 1990 levels by 2020, 80% below those levels by 2050, carbon neutrality for municipal emissions, strong measures to encourage building retrofitting, reducing total energy use for both older and new buildings, and supplying 50% of all of our energy from renewable sources by 2030. And in November, this past November, we presented a climate action roadmap to City Council to show our progress so far in achieving those goals and measures we'll be looking at to continue that progress, including the REACH code that I'll be talking about. Next slide, please. As part of the various climate action measures and also in connection with our ongoing general plan update, the city last year did a GHG inventory. We were delighted to find out that we actually had achieved the state's goal of keeping our 2020 emissions just below 1990 levels. So we gave ourselves a bit of a gold star on that. Very large amount of that energy GHG reductions was as a result of the city of Palm Springs deciding to launch Desert Community Energy, which is our local community choice aggregator. In addition to my city role, I serve as program manager for DCE, as well as the New England Regional Energy Network. City Council also decided to have as a default that customers would be on the carbon-free program, and most of them have agreed to stay on that program. So they're getting 100% carbon-free energy. We saw that residential energy represents about 22.4% of the estimated GHG emissions, which is the second largest contributor after transportation and before commercial and industrial energy use. And while the city has a limited ability to control transportation because we don't can't keep cars off the streets, well, guess what? The city does issue building permits. And so this is a huge area where local jurisdictions can take measures to reduce their GHG emissions. Next slide, please. So the cost effectiveness explorer, I'm known affectionately as REACH Man because I'm a power user of the cost effectiveness explorer, and it really has been a great help for me in designing a policy for Palm Springs. So before I went into the sort of the wonderful details and features of the policy, I kind of wrote myself an elevator speech. What do I want to get out of the policy? What's my objective here? So design a policy to produce cost and energy savings for mixed fuel residential buildings undergoing renovations with additional measures required for higher building permit values. So that's sort of my North Star, if you will, of how I've been using the cost effectiveness explorer. There's a lot of details there, so I would encourage you to start with a quick guide and then the building stock estimates, so that you see, as Eric mentioned, the vintages of the houses, whether they're mostly single family, multifamily, various combinations of both. Many cities such as Long Beach, as Eric just demonstrated, have two climate zones. On the California Energy Commission website, you can see what those boundaries are. There's a lot of information in the various bubbles as you click, and that will link to text actually in the cost effectiveness studies. So text from the PDF studies, which are available on the Explorer, is embedded in the bubbles. The filters, as Eric just said, to sort of help you narrow your search. So in my case, what were my filters? Existing single family homes and mixed fuel, meaning both electricity and gas powered. And so those were sort of the filters to help me narrow my search. And then once you design the policy, as Eric just said, there's a lot of information that you can get. So the best way to kind of start is with the cost effectiveness per home results. And then you can add on energy efficiency savings and citywide estimates. Those are kind of to the right of the columns, but you can start with actually seeing the numbers of it will cost you so much and save you so much over the life cycle. Next slide, please. So once again, Eric showed you a whole bunch of options. What were sort of the options that I focused on? Which measures have the least cost and highest benefit cost ratios? It's a really easy sell. Reach codes, as Misty mentioned, does have to be approved by your local jurisdiction, your city council or county supervisors if you're the county. And it's easier sell just to come in and say, well, it's going to cost you a little bit upfront, but this is all the money that you're going to be saving over the life cycle. And we want to encourage people to actually carry out these savings, and we don't want to disincentivize for cost reasons. So with that in mind, which measures produce the most energy savings and GHG reductions? Those aligned with the policy goals of both the City of Palm Springs and Desert Community Energy. In Palm Springs case, nearly all of our housing stock is pre-1978 with very limited insulation, beautiful mid-century modern homes, but nobody thought about insulating them, as I discovered when I moved in full-time into my house and had an energy efficiency audit and said, no insulation. So I got that done. We're obviously focusing on reducing GHG, but since most of our houses are already on the carbon-free program and electricity is our largest load, we also want to focus on measures that will actually reduce your electricity costs, and that's also good for the grid. And as I mentioned, most of our houses in Palm Springs are mixed fuel because we've got gas and water heating and pools. So I didn't really look at electrification, but looked at what measures are best for mixed fuel houses. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, I was able to use the Explorer and come up with actually a proposal that will be ready to go to councils and hopefully in the next few months. It applies to additions, alterations, and remodels of single-family homes built before 2011. That's nearly all of our housing stock. We have a lot of extreme makeovers in Palm Springs. People are coming in, buying our houses, good for, I guess, the real estate prices, but they're older houses and they need various upgrades. So there's a lot of building permit activity there. We are looking at multi-family home requirements, so that product is also under development. Because we have a large amount of high-end upgrades, we do have a varying score, as Eric mentioned. The higher level of building permit will require more measures, more points, more target points. We have several mandatory provisions, LEDs and photo sensors for your exterior. And you can see a house, which happens to be mine, which shows the benefits of putting in LEDs and exterior photo sensing in the cooler areas. And then also water heating. That's a very good cost effectiveness measure. And because it's gas powered, it will actually drive GHG emissions down. Electric readiness measures are required for installing PV. A lot of sun in Palm Springs, so a lot of folks have solar. We want people to do electric ready measures for that, which means putting in the plugs for future electric cooktops or kitchen and laundry things for your dishwashers and things like that. So that's a possible measure there that will be mandatory. And then we looked at combining various measures into creating the target scores. Some of them are in packages, some of them are individual. And as you go through this floor, you'll see that some measures may be cost effective when combined, but not individually. Next slide, please. So equity considerations, as Misty mentioned, you can use the Explorer with equity in mind. Projects with a permit value of less than $25,000 are only required to do the lighting measures and the water heating package. Estimated cost of loss less than $250 and substantial benefits for that. We'll give you credits for measures already installed or required to be installed, all of the California Energy Code. Income qualified customers under the utility discount programs, CARE and FERA, are exempt for the requirements except for the lighting measures and water heating packages, regardless of permit value, unless there's actually those costs are going to be covered by various programs. We did exempt ADUs. That's a choice that you can make in your model ordinance. We exempted them to encourage their creation, to increase our housing stock. There is an exception to provide flexibility if the project is technically or economically infeasible. And we'll be looking at alternative funding sources for upgrades such as the IOU's Energy Savings Assistance Program and the new federal infrastructure bill. Next slide, please. Lessons learned. These are all the things that I was able to do using the Explorer and where I'm going for the next steps. The GHG inventory really gave me a good focus of what I wanted to be looking at. Also knowing what the energy policies are of the city, and in our case, Desert Community Energy helped me establish my policy objective. The building stock, in our case, largely single family, built before 1978. If you are looking at new housing, you should also understand what will be expected for your jurisdiction under the regional housing needs assessment. Be aware that there are changes coming in the 22 Energy Code, which will be effective on January 1, 2023, as well as solar benefits, which is the NEM 3.0 proceeding currently pending in the CPUC. Eric and his team, they're updating the Explorer frequently, so please check to see what's new. And with all that in mind, I have an ordinance pretty much scoped out. We'll be conducting outreach and then presenting it to the Palm Springs City Council with the goal of effecting this January 1 with the new energy code. And then in wearing my Inland Regional Network hat, I will be developing this as a model ordinance for the entire IREN service area of Riverside and San Bernardino counties. And thank you. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you, Eric, as well. Are there any questions? Okay, no questions for Eric or David? Put those at the chat if you like. Alrighty. It doesn't look like we have any questions. Just want to, oh wait, we do have one. Okay, Ira Waldman asks, how did you deal with the gas heater pool?
That's probably for me, which is at least in Palm Springs, there's no way. You probably heard of a lot of issues of people saying, don't take away my gas-powered cooktop. That may be an issue within Palm Springs, at least in the single family. A lot of the houses that we're talking about that would need the upgrades are filing for permits. They have the pool, so we're not including any specific pool measure in our efforts because it's probably just not workable. There are some proposals for electric pool heaters. Not sure that those would work in our jurisdiction. So the answer is a workaround. Looking at other measures.
Got it. Okay, and I just want to add to that, the Reach Codes program is actually beginning, we just began a study on pools for both residential and on electric heating for pools and spas for both residential and commercial pools. We anticipate some draft results out in the next, probably at the end of June, next month and a half or so. So please be on the lookout for those results. Okay, we have one other question. Rita asks, is there a way to use the Explorer with a team of people? Eric, I'm
I'll
gonna,
take that one. Yeah, excuse me. Yes, there is. You can share any of your policies. You can share building stock estimates with a team member and collaborate that way. And yeah, that's
all righty. So yeah, it makes it very easy to share, actually. As you're working on something, you can send it over to somebody very easily, right, which I find very
Oh,
handy.
thank you, Misty. And I also wanted to add that in addition to sharing your, digitally your policies so that someone else can log into the Explorer and see the policy that you created, there's also ways to export results in various screens and building stock values into Excel and PDFs. And users have found that helpful both for the process of developing a policy, but also when it's time to start gathering your documents to go to council and create your staff report. That's been useful as well.
Okay. And we have another question for you, David. Is a copy of your draft ordinance available?
I'm happy to circulate that. I'll be taking it to the, I've got some work to do this weekend. If folks can send me a message in the chat, I can, Ira, if you can put a direct message with your email or send it over to Rita, I'll have a draft that I can send you. I will be probably presenting it to the Sustainability Commission in our June meeting, so it'll be publicly available. Don't want to completely put it out to the world for another 2 weeks, but happy to send you my draft. I'll have a new version over the weekend.
Thank you. We also have some draft language available through the Explorer. It hasn't been customized as David's has quite. His is ready for Palm Springs, but we do have some model language available that you can download from the Explorer right from the policy creation there. When you're in the wizard, it'll ask you, would you like to download the tables, and would you like to download some ordinance language also? Encourage everybody to explore there. Okay, any other questions? I'm not seeing any in the, oh, we do have another question. Are there restrictions about who can use the Explorer?
No, it's open for everybody and at no cost.
Fabulous. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for the team? Alrighty, seeing no others, I will say thank you very much to everybody for making the time to attend today. Please play with the Explorer tool. It's actually got some great information there. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. We're happy to help anytime we can. There are contact information on both the Explorer tool and the localenergycodes.com's website, as well as all of our emails here on the screen. So thank you everybody for attending. Very much appreciate you making the time.